This is the second part that we started working at, and what we're going to try to do is create an expression, a linear expression, based off of set of data that they give us. We have to find a pattern in it, and then we have to create our own expression. So please remember to keep listening for all the vocab words, because I expect that you can give it back to me using all these vocab words. So anyhow, we have this pattern of 1, 4, 7. I've left 2 blanks because I want you to continue the pattern with 2 more numbers. And then these dots are represented that we skipped a bunch of numbers, and I'm going to look for the 21st term when I'm done. So what I'd like to do first is we have to figure out what the 2 blanks are after the 7. We have to continue this pattern. In order to do that, the first thing you have to do is look at the difference between 1 and 5. Find out what it goes up or down by, because sometimes it is a ascending number and sometimes a descending number. Anyhow, 1 to 4 is an increase of 3. To make sure it's linear, because linear expressions go up by the same amount each time, we look at 4 to 7, and it is also 3. So it's going to be a pretty safe bet that the one from 7 to this blank is going to go up by 3. Knowing that, we can continue the pattern by just adding 3 is 10, and then adding 3 more to 10, which will make that 13. Before we can go and get this 21st term, we're going to have to make our expression. We are going to have to create one of our own from the clues that we have here. We already know that we're going to have a variable that we don't know what it is. In this case, we're going to put it as n. It could be x, it could be whatever letter you want. The trick to this is knowing what the change is in your data set, and it's this 3. What you do with it is you take that 3, whatever you found out that the data set goes up or down by, and you multiply it by the variable. That 3 becomes a constant, and it's going to be 3 times n. Now we're not quite done yet, but that is definitely the first step. Over on the right here, I'm going to draw myself a very small t-chart just so you see how this works. The first thing we have to, or the next thing we have to do is to check to see if 3n, maybe 3n itself is our variable expression. So what you do is you take the first term, that 1, and you substitute it for the variable n. 3 times n is 3, and you go back to that first term, and you see that that is not what we're looking for. So now you have to say to yourself, well, I'm at 3, but the first term that I have is 1. How can I get from 3 to 1? And I hope we all know that you can subtract 2, and that'll get you to that first term. So let's try it again. We take this first term in our t-chart, we substitute it here for n, and we try it out. Remember, this is just in your head. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 2 is 1. That is our first term. If you try it again with the second term, this number 2, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 2 is 4, and we are good to go. So now that you have that, you know that 3n minus 2 is going to be your expression. In the expression 3n minus 2, we know that n is our variable, and the 3 and the minus 2 is our constants, because we're going to do that each time to it. Knowing that information, now that we are that far, we are ready to find that 21st term. Now I just picked 21st out of, or the 21 term just out of the air. I wanted to get something that wasn't very easy to figure out. So 21, basically, if we were to draw this t-chart a little bit further, we'd have 21 right there. It's a term number, so it's in the left-hand side of our t-chart. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take that 21 and substitute it into that n. If we were to write it out, it would look something like 3 times 21 minus 2. 3 times 21 is 63, minus 2 is 61. So this 21st term right here would be 61. Do not panic if you don't get it yet. We're going to do a few more, and we're going to practice it for at least a couple days in class. So here's our next example. Our next example is 3, 7, 11, and I'm going to just erase this above us just so we can have room to write. So there's our set of data, 3, 7, 11, a couple of blanks. And remember, what we have to do first is to figure out what the difference is in the data set. So we're going to look between the 3 and the 7 and try to find what the difference between those two numbers is, and the difference is 4. And you look and you're going to check to make sure it's a linear equation, and what is the difference between 7 and 11? And again, the difference is 4. The T-chart means nothing. We're not even filling it in at the moment. We're just using it just to remind you of how we're going to create this expression. So we know consistently it's going to go up by 4. We have a variable that can be any letter, but I'm just going to call it n. And I guess just the rule is put the difference, this 4, in front of n, knowing that that means multiplication. So we are going to multiply 4 times n. That could be our entire expression, but of course we're going to have to check first. Most times it won't be. So in order to check, what we do is we take that first term and we substitute it here for n. 4 times 1, when we substitute, is 4. But when we look over here, our first answer to our first term is going to be 3. I'm at 4, it's at 3. You've got to figure, how can I get from 4 to 3? And hopefully you know, well, all I have to do is subtract 1 from that. Once you write that down, I want you to go right back and check it one more time. Put the 1 in there. 4 times 1 is 1. Minus 1 is 3. And that is our first term. But we've got to keep going and check it a couple times because this next term is 7. We want to make sure it's going to work. So you take this 2, you put it here where the variable is. 4 times 2 is 8, minus 1 is 7. We are good to go. You can do one more just for tickles and giggles. Take that 3. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 1 is 11, and you know now that you're absolutely on the right track. Now that I'm looking at this equation, I see, or the data set up top, I see that we forgot, or I forgot, you have no responsibility here, I forgot to continue the data set. So let's just do that now. Up by 4 is 15, up by 4 is 19. But regardless, we have found our equation, the n being the variable, the 4 and the minus 1 being the constants, and the entire thing, 4n minus 1, being our expression. What we do to find the 21st term is you take the 21st term and you put it where n is. So 4 times 21 minus 1. 4 times 21 is 84, minus 1 is 83, and that will be our 21st term. I'm going to do one more. We spent a long time doing it in class, but it's worth taking the time on. It's a new concept for many. So it's practice, guys. If you don't get it in the first couple tries, you keep going at it, and then you come and find me and we'll work on it together. Once you see it, you'll be able to do it pretty easily. So if we're looking, our first step again is to find the difference between the data set, the numbers in the data set. You look between 2 and 8, that's 6. 6. Why don't I carry on and keep going? 6 more than 14 is 20. 6 more than 20 is 26. Remember, we have a variable down here in our expression. We take whatever the difference is and put it right there in front. So we're going to multiply 6 times n. We don't quite know what we're going to do yet, so we just, in our mind, you don't even have to write this data set, but it's nice for you to see it. So we're going to substitute 1 into that n. 6 times 1 is 6. But remember, our first term is 2. So we're not there yet. We have to think to ourselves, okay, I'm at 6, but I need to get to 2. What can I add or subtract to get myself to 2? And we know that we can subtract 4. Go ahead and try it again. You put 1 in the data set, into the variable. 6 times 1 is 6, minus 4 is 2. You know the first one works. Let's take a look at the second one. It should be 8. So we put the 2 in for the variable. 6 times 2 is 12, minus 4, that is 8. Check it one more time. We know the answer should be 14 looking at our data set. Put the 3 in. 6 times 3 is 18, minus 4 is 14, and we are good to go. Knowing that this is our expression, this being our variable, those two being our constants, we can go ahead and now substitute for the 21st term. To do that, we just we substitute 21 right there. Complete the question. 6 at 21 is 126. Minus 4 is 122. That's it, guys. Make sure we have it because we're going to move on to something different tomorrow.